Hello, students. This is for PAD 502 research methods, or if you're in the EMPA program, EMPA 502 research methods. Chapter 1 regarding the scientific method. So I have had a lot of time to think about making videos for our students. And I know that for research methods and quant methods, which is 503, a lot of students sometimes are very nervous about these courses because they believe that it involves a lot of math and math can be difficult and math can be scary. And I understand that, as I myself am not a big math person. But I've always believed that anything in life can be broken down into smaller parts that are more manageable into bigger parts. After all, every day we drive a car, most of us do anyway. The car was not built all at one time. There were pieces that were built and put together. Similarly, that's actually how a lot of courses are actually designed. They're pieces that are put together to get to the final product, which is your final exam, and you graduate. So, which is actually very much how college is, right? Because you take intro courses, and then you build up to higher level courses, and then you graduate. So, for my idea to work, I have to have students to kind of buy in to the idea that this is very manageable. So, over the next several videos, I'm going to discuss this research methods in the easiest way possible by just simply choosing one small tiny topic to discuss each video for each chapter. So, for example, today I'm going to be discussing something called the scientific method, which probably may have sounded familiar to some students actually, because a lot of you may have taken this at undergraduate courses, or maybe sometimes you heard it somewhere. Very possible, right? So the scientific method, let me get into this, and I simply have a question that I'm going to also answer at the same time while I'm talking to you. If you were to think about the scientific method, and you were to say, how would you define the scientific method based on the readings of the textbook, which by now all students should have, how would you define the scientific method? And the next question I would say is, why does the author say that the scientific method is a standardized set of techniques? And of course, the last question, part 3 of this discussion would be, what gets standardized? So there are 4 characteristics of the scientific method that are important for students to know. And all I want students to do is know a little bit from each chapter, just like sort of like a candy bar. Your professor really likes candy. I admit that very freely. And I particularly like candy bars, small candy bars. So they're mini little bars. We get them on Halloween, and you can go to the store and get them. I particularly like Milky Way, the dark Milky Way, and those are pretty yummy. And I like Three Musketeers, the chewy nougat. My wife is not a caramel fan, but I actually kind of like caramel. So, and of course, there's always Hershey's with almonds, So, but I always like those little mini bars because, first of all, I'm a short, petite person. So having those mini bar in my hand makes me feel like I'm kind of a giant. And the second reason is that, well, they're small, so you don't really feel too guilty about eating it, right? So that's all it really comes down to. It's little bite-sized pieces of knowledge. That's the easy way to remember it, and the most comfortable way to get through this course. So there's 4 parts, 4 characteristics. One is logical, the second part is confirmable, third part is repeatable, and the fourth part is scrutinizable. So which one of those characteristics do you think, as a student reading this course, which one do you think is most difficult to achieve in the social sciences, and why? Several questions I want to discuss now in the following next few minutes about chapter 1 and the scientific method. Now, based on the readings that I've done, and I've thought about how the best way to talk to students about this is I would define, in my personal opinion, which again could be wrong, but you're not going to get extra points if you copy and paste my answer. But if that's your answer, that's also okay. The scientific method, if you think about it, is more of a structured way of building knowledge that relies on logic and evidence to explain how the world works, whether it's in the natural or social sciences. And it's not just about collecting information, but also using systematic techniques to observe phenomena interpret findings, and draw conclusions that can be examined and challenged by others. What makes the scientific method very different from everyday research is that it contributes to a broader body of knowledge and follows consistent rules for how evidence is gathered, analyzed, and interpreted. In social science specifically, the scientific method helps us move beyond opinions or assumptions and towards explanations, something that we are interested in studying, analyzing, which are then grounded in theory and supported by data. Even though social science is messier, easy way to remember it, messier than natural sciences, because people and social systems change, whereas natural sciences, maybe they don't change that much. Maybe, for example, natural sciences, volcanoes don't really change much, for example, or rocks. It's easy that way. But people change, attitudes change, behaviors change. It's a disciplined way to study that complexity. Now, of the four characteristics, logical, confirmable, repeatable, and scrutinizable. Personally, I think repeatable is the most difficult to achieve in social science research, and I'm going to explain why. So with repeatable type of social science, repeatable type of characteristics in social sciences, social studies, when we do research, which I've done and published, all kinds of different types of research, social sciences then, of course, studies people, behaviors, organizations, social systems, which are constantly changing. Human experiences, when we observe humans or interact with each other, they change over time. They change based on time, context, culture. They change over emotions, feelings, age, possibly gender related. And of course, there are external events. Like there could be a war going on in some part of the world which affects somebody at different times, even though you may not actually be in that war per se, as an example. But you could look at stress levels. Let's say stress levels in the MPA or the EMPA students, right? They have, one kind of like study shows that, we look at stress levels among grad students and they have different outcome levels. But it changes due to, institutional policies that go on, changes in the political environment in the United States or, somewhere else. It could be something to do with economic conditions. The job is not great. The economy is not great. Maybe there's personal life stuff. Maybe you're getting evicted or you're having a bad breakup with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe a divorce. Something like that could easily happen, right? So if those same instruments, procedures are not used, and even if they are used, but the social environment itself is not stable in the way that physical conditions for natural sciences would work, or in a lab. The world is not really a laboratory, right? I mean, the world can be our laboratory, but it's always changing all the time. Things change, people change. Now, of course, that doesn't mean, as someone who's a social scientist, and we may have some students in the class who may become social scientists also. They may go on to earn their PhD and do other research as such. It doesn't mean that your social science-based research is unscientific. It's weak. It's not, reliable. It's not something that should not be taken seriously. Of course not. But what it means is researchers must be especially careful in how they design studies, interpret findings, and all of limitations. Repeatability in social science often means finding similar patterns or trends across studies, rather than expecting identical results. This reflects the reality that social behavior is complex and shaped by multiple interacting factors. So it is something that can be disappointing sometimes to some students if they go outside and do research, and then they find that it doesn't match some study they had read before. But that doesn't mean that the study or their study is not relevant or lacks scientific seriousness. It doesn't mean like that. Very often, in fact, and this has actually been a very, very good criticism for social scientists researchers. And in recent years, there has been some presidential administrations and even prominent scientists who said that, the biggest problem is in social science research is that there's nothing really new, actually. People read about a study in some journal article and they decide, I want to replicate that study. And, it's an easy way to get tenure or get promoted because you just go and copy and paste some study out there that you found in some prestigious journal. And then you go and get it published again in some other prestigious journal. Well, to be truthful with you, you really haven't discovered anything new, right? You've simply copied and pasted something that was already verified. So what exactly did you contribute as a scientist? You really didn't contribute that much, actually. But the problem is, if you try to do some groundbreaking study and you do some amazing out-of-the-box thinking, you can't really find a journal that may want to publish it that easily. Because the journal will say, well, this seems so new. We don't want to get criticism for putting something out there that may or may not be replicable, hence we can't be provable. So you have to think a lot about these different types of thought processes. For me personally, I don't think it's such a bad thing to go and try something new. And the world, there are literally thousands of online academic journals which charge either a very small fee or no fee at all to publish something groundbreaking. Just keep in mind, however, that oftentimes, and this we'll get more into this as we go along in the program, sometimes social scientists may not be entirely honest about how they design studies, in the sense that they may simply try to not just replicate, but they could manipulate the findings for their own benefit, which has also been a big criticism. It's what's considered academic fraud, in order to keep their grant or to ask for more money. And in many years, recent years, a lot of academics have gone into trouble for that because they weren't being entirely honest or ethical about putting their findings forward and publishing them. So these are things to keep in mind. And as I said, each chapter, we're simply going to discuss one little bite-sized piece of the candy bar that is social sciences research methods. Thank you again for listening to my lecture, and I hope to see you at the next one.